Informative, educational, objective, inclusive, comprehensive. This is Progress Report. Updates and conversations from the Government Information Service.
Good day and welcome to another episode of Progress Report, updates and conversations from the Government Information Service. My name is Ivan Khanna with the star of the show, Gleneva Hodge, and we are back with part 2 with Ms. Dorothea Hodge. Part 1, those of you that were listening, those of you that missed it, you can go back and find it. We talked about just your work, where you come from, your history, being in government, your time working on Tony Blair's campaign. We actually ended up talking about Anguilla's preparedness for the next level. Most of it was recently focused around the Blue Week and the Anguilla joining the Blue Belt program and those type of things. But a point in that conversation was a mantra that I live by, which is relationship is the currency of business. And I know your business has done quite a lot. This is outside of the passionate Anguillian Dorothea, who she for? If we go back there, but tell us just quickly about Equitas.
Yeah, so when I left government when Tony Blair left, I left government, which was a bit of a surprise, but actually the right thing to do. And I thought, what do I want to do with my life after this? I had offers to do all kinds of corporate jobs, because after that everybody wants to throw money at you so they could learn all the secrets from government. But I really thought, what I really want to do is provide advice to leaders from the African, Caribbean continent in terms of the global context. Because when you see how disenfranchised some leaders are internationally, and I went to all of these big international meetings with my boss, and I saw, in the Caribbean, we've got great leaders like Mia Mottley, but for some leaders who are new or who are elderly from the African continent or Asian continent, and their teams, at these big international meetings, they're lost.
Right.
So I thought, I want to create a service where I can support great leaders to provide great services for the people they represent. And that's what I did. So for 15 years, in one shape or form or another, less so when I'm working for Anguilla, in the times I've worked for Anguilla, I've supported great leaders, great political leaders, sometimes business leaders, to basically to do what I do for Anguilla, which is to be the best that they can be, right, and turn that out into providing great services for their people. And I've had such awesome opportunities to work with incredible people. So one of the big projects I did before I came back and doing this work was with an amazing woman called Angelique Kidjo, who is a African singer, and President Macron. And they launched at the G7 in France the African Women's Finance Initiative. And on that,
I can't let you skip over that. Like, give me a little bit of information on that. African Women's
Finance Initiative.
So what does that do?
So
how spidey senses are tingling? I just figured I'd stop it right there. Go right ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to just shoot it on in.
I mean, that's just one of the amazing projects that I've had the privilege to work on. But it's an idea from Angelique. Her family were market traders in Africa. And if you're a woman on the continent, you, in general, not every country, but most, you don't inherit land. Still goes through the man, which means you have no collateral.
I know a couple Anglican women that wasn't going to work out well for
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It means you have no collateral. It means that you can't ever raise a loan. So it means that you actually can never ever transition from maybe selling by the side of the road to anything further. And in the main, in those communities, the women take care of the children, the education, the healthcare. I mean, it's no different from most other communities. You're the caregiver, which means actually you can't transition those societies. That you're kind of stuck. And there's still a tradition now of kind of market women. When I say market women, I mean women who would grow their crops, take them to market, sell them themselves, go back, grow their crops and sell. So those are market women. They are stuck in a cycle. They don't use banking services.
Right.
So they save, and they just don't make enough to transition any further. But if you could have a little line of credit, or you could take a little loan, you can then maybe employ one or two people, buy more products, plant more seeds, and that can change.
Right.
Because if women have the resources to support their children through education, you don't have to pull your child out of school to work in the field. In the same way my father was pulled out of school to work at 9. Yeah, those societies are still, in many places, still at that level.
Wow.
So the African Women's Finance Initiative was Angelique's idea. She, I think President Macron asked her to sing at something. That was slightly unfortunate for him, because she was like, right, President Macron, what are you doing?
Whoa.
And by the time he, there's something about these fierce women. By the end of that conversation...
You wouldn't imagine when you're surrounded by them, you just sit on the left side and let them face each other and have the conversation and take the room.
It's
Hint,
safer. It is safer.
It is so much safer.
It is so much safer.
You guys have literally just turned towards each other and that's it. Like, I don't have anything in it. Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah.
Carry on.
You're out. I mean, I think President Macron was probably thinking the same thing. Like, I invited this woman to sing, I think it was, and then he was like, and now I've just committed to getting the G7 to support a line of credit for all African women through the banks and changing the entire banking situation. And that's what they're trying to do. They're basically trying to restructure the banking structure in Africa so that banks lend money to women, because in general
They don't.
they don't. And that is a big thing, because if you can transform the way those banks operate, that does mean that you start to provide much bigger opportunities for the next generation, in terms of education, in terms of healthcare. I mean, it's just extraordinary. So I've had the privilege. I worked with President Macron and Angelique Kidjo on the launch of that at the G7, which was incredible, absolutely incredible. And I think everybody was like, what have we just said we're going to do? Like everyone bought into it, because they know it. At the end of the day, it's a good thing, and that's what I do. So I work on things that are life changing, that transform lives. That's my mantra. Is anything that transforms lives. It's the kind of thing that I have worked on over the last 15 years and been brought in to do those kind of projects.
I think for me, not lost for words, because that rarely happens. But as a young Anguillian and looking at you and a lot of things that you've accomplished, what advice would you give to other young Anguillian women who would essentially want to follow in your footsteps, to push and to get out there? What advice would you offer to them?
See, I'm going to be honest. I don't think I'm nothing when I can look up the young women that you've got here. And I say young women, let me just change that. The ministers that you have in Anguilla, are mind-blowing. Like, they're just extraordinary. And what I would say to a young Anguillian woman, because I'm now old, yeah? I keep thinking that maybe I'm like 25, but I'm really not. I'm really not. I'm like old now. But I think I think young Anguillian women have got such extraordinary role models in their two ministers at the moment. I mean, they are extraordinary individuals. Minister Deanne, Commonwealth athlete, Miss UK, lawyer. I mean, and she's not even hit. She didn't even hit 30, and minister.
Yeah.
You know, and they are bringing in things for their country. And I would say to young Anguillian women, model your leaders. Yeah, spend time with them. Ask them how what was the mindset and the thinking that they got to that means that they feel comfortable and confident doing what they're doing, leading their country under the age of 30. Because you're only 10 years behind. What I find remarkable is when I was doing this in 2010, your leaders now were at school, yeah? So, and I'm working for people who are now, the ministers are my bosses, and I'm facilitating, and they're in school. So for the young Anguillian women, you've got phenomenal role models, and they are on the ground and nearby you. Spend time with them, find time, spend time with them, ask them how they did it, because everything is mindset. Everything is about deciding the way you want to go and how you want to do it. That I had an amazing time recently with your youth parliamentarian, Ronica. Who came to London to speak at the Youth Parliament and spoke in the House of Commons.
Yes. We've had Ronica on this show before, and I think Ronica is amazing. My daughter is also part of the Youth Parliament, and I think when she started, Dejanay Smith, I don't know.
She's the deputy governor.
Okay.
In
the
the Youth
ex-president.
Parliament. And
she gonna just speak a little louder so you can skip over that stuff, but she's twice her. I can leave that there.
And for me, that is an honor. But I remember when she got into Youth Parliament, and I said to her, these are people that Ronica, Taisha, these are young women who, if you don't want to look up to your mother, you know, take her, and I asked them, I'm like, take her under your wing, because I see such great things from them. And again, I just can't emphasize enough how incredible I think Ronica is. And the things, it's like you can see nothing but a bright future ahead for her. And it's about wanting, and for me it's about, I guess I see this and I know what's possible. We have these role models, our ministers, those youth parliamentarians, and you see them, but it's how do you get the average Anguillian who thinks that they're so far removed from, as someone who, you know, I was a youth ambassador and youth parliamentarian and all of those things, and I often heard people saying, yeah, you can do that because you're in those circles. And it's strange, quite honestly, it's strange to me, but I sometimes try to take myself away from and go, okay, but how do you make that accessible to those persons who think that they're not in those circles?
And what I would say is that it is a mindset. It doesn't matter where you come from to where you end up. It really doesn't matter. I mean, and for me, this is so important to understand, because it's the choice you make is what determines your future. If you are single focused, whatever life experience you have had, like we grew up, so I think people have a perception that everything is rosy when people go to England, but actually Slough and Chalvey, where a lot of Anguillians live, was one of the poorest areas of that entire region. Yeah, so we didn't grow up in some kind of bed of luxury. Yeah, and most people didn't. In that period of time, there was racism. You couldn't get, you know, the house, the tiny house I grew up in, tiny house. Someone from my dad's church had to lend him the money because they weren't giving mortgages to black people at that point. Yeah, so I didn't come from a bed of roses, and being a migrant into Britain is seriously hard. You start at the bottom. You have none of the kind of mechanisms, support structures, and everything else that you have around you. That someone, and I remember this when I was recently with a former colleague of mine, and I thought, wow, he's just remarkable. And he was also from migrant parents, but he's white, yeah. But he has had access to an entire part of society that I never had, yeah. And I didn't grow up with a whole set of like city lawyers, city accountants, city doctors around me, because we were all immigrants and we were all poor, and there was Indian immigrants, Polish immigrants, Welsh. They may as well have been immigrants because they'd come from Wales to. And no, everyone was at the same level. And it's a mindset, yeah? It's a mindset shift of deciding it doesn't matter where I come from. I said to you about my father. My father grew up here, no mother, no father, stony ground, was working in St. Martin at 9. Yeah? And a whole different island, whole different language, because his family had no money. So they sent him into what's called service, to work as a baker's boy, carrying bread on his head from one end of St. Martin to the other, selling on the roads. So when I'm in Africa and I see children selling on the roads, which they still do, you don't see that anymore in the Caribbean, I see my father every day. And I think, from a little orphan child who went from St. Martin, speaking French and Dutch, left school at 9, so I was only in school for a few years, to Santo Domingo cutting cane. Then he took himself to England, and then he got his house, and then he raised his children, and then he raised us with a mindset, because what he had did not determine his future. He was very clear, and he learned. I mean, he travelled all around the Caribbean, and he learned, and he did correspondence courses, but he had a mindset. Yeah? So it doesn't matter where you start off with. You can start off from the rocks in stony ground, with no food to eat, as a complete orphan, and you can drop out of school because you have to after 4 years, 3 years, or whatever it is, but you can still get yourself to a place where you or your next generation is able to bring some kind of value to the world. And that's why I say mindset shift. And I'm just going to share a little story with you, because these things are so important for the next generation to realise it's not all, just because they see you as in a strata of society, it's not all that easy. I said I worked in the House of Lords, and I said I worked for Valerie Amos. Valerie Amos left, I think it's the Essequibo River in Guyana at 9. Her family they were in a village. Her father was a teacher, and he decided, I need a better life for my family. So they left a village by a river, and she became the Under Secretary General of the United Nations. A child born in a river village, by the time she's 65, was the Under Secretary General of the United Nations. It doesn't matter where you start from. It's what you decide you are going to do. And there was an afternoon when I was working for Valerie. I keep talking about my father, but when there's always this grand opening of the House of Lords. Yeah, she's the leader of the House of Lords now, so she's able to host this. And I could bring 2 guests. I brought my father and my bishop, and she brought her parents, and my father and her father sat there, and they were so comfortable. They brought a little rum. They just were comfortable. They were soaking it all in the middle of the establishment. And I was looking, we were like, these 2 men are enjoying it themselves too much here. Too much. And it was only afterwards, and then we had lunch, and there was like a table of like 25 of us, and they were like, you would have thought those 2 men ran the House of Lords the way they were behaving, yeah? Because they were like this, like the 2 kings. It was 10 years afterwards that I thought, it must have been incredible for them to have seen where their life decision. So my father as an orphan in Stony Ground, and Valerie's dad from a school teacher next to a village river, had taken them to sitting in the kind of oldest parliament in the world where their daughter ran it. Yeah? It takes a mindset. If you are determined, it doesn't matter where you start from. It doesn't matter where you start from. If you are determined to see your passion through in the world, you can see your passion through, and you will be a world changer forever if you see your passion through. Don't bother about where you start from. You can start from anywhere. You can have any kind of history, but you can change. That's what Jesus said. Jesus said it didn't matter. Yeah, he took everybody in. Come hang out with me. He sat and ate with people that nobody wanted to talk to. No one wanted to hang around. Let prostitutes wash his feet. Yeah, hang out with the tax collectors that no one wanted to hang with. It didn't matter, because what he said is and he hung out with a woman at the well that he's like, you've got 5 husbands and then the one you're sleeping with ain't your husband either. Yeah. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter where you start from. It doesn't matter your history. That's what the Bible teaches us. It matters what you're going on to do. And that's what I think is so important for any young person. It doesn't matter where you start from. You start from this rock. And the other thing I want to say, which I think is so important, and I think this is really for the young people that now have got this kind of crazy, you can't go here, you can't go there, you can't go here on this small island. I was really blessed recently to understand from my aunt, my cousin, about our history, and she's documented it, so we know the name of our slave ancestor. Yeah, from 1830. And I wish I'd known about this before, because I could have asked my uncle about them, because he used to look after them. Those people, so it's not that far away. 1830, it's not that far away. Yeah. And my uncle used to feed them, look after them, water them, wash them, care for them. He was their carer. Those people were trafficked across a continent, trafficked across an ocean, and made it here. Thousands didn't. And then they were beaten, albeit, thank God, in Anguilla only for about 30 years. And they were beaten, extreme violence against them, but they still produced offspring and went on to live a life and clung to this rock and survived. Therefore, it is in your gift. Survival is in your gift. It's in your DNA. It's in who you are. So anything else is not for you. Yeah, and I think this is such an important. Your ancestors had such a rough, tough life. Yeah, on this rock. Yeah, they were carrying water for miles every morning. Then turn on the tap business. Yeah. Carrying water for miles from the quarter well, or the valley well, or what was the other one?
There's one in
Sandy Ground well.
There's
Bednes in the west.
Yeah, but I don't know exactly when the Bednes one, because there's the one across the street. A Rogers well across the road, and I know that's the well that
originally.
Yeah, they had to carry water every morning, and I see it's and maybe taking a bit of a trip into some parts of the African continent might help, because some people still have to carry water every morning. Yeah, but it just your ancestors had a tough life. You actually have the chance of life. And you actually have, the world is literally your oyster today as a young person, in a way that never was, like 20, 30 years ago. Yeah. You've got Google in your hand, which will tell you anything about anywhere in the world that you want to go or do or say or think or do whatever. And the only thing that stops you is what is in your mind. Your mind is the most powerful machine to make you think about what you could do, where you could be, and who you could be. And I would say use that option, use that opportunity to be anyone you want to be, to go anywhere you want to go, to do anything you want to do. It's a mindset thing.
I can't let you leave without using this opportunity. Can I have some time?
Go ahead.
Let
Let me soak
So
some
polite.
of that.
So polite.
You're talking about the mindset. Angola has had a very interesting last 15 years. Let's say the last 15 years. We've had, now we're talking from a government standpoint, we've had two different parties, administrations, complete 5-year terms. We've seen banking crisis. We've seen pandemic.
Before that, you had the 2008-9 global recession.
Global recession.
Starting there, I think.
Yeah, we had global recession, we had banking crisis, we had pandemics, we had hurricanes, natural disasters. We've seen so much. We've been under immense pressure. You've always had Angola at heart. You said just now it starts with your mindset. I'm a little bit concerned about some of the, don't want to call them prevailing thoughts because they're not, but some of the thoughts that are out there now as to where we're going. I'm hearing different opinions. Alright, oh, GST gonna kill us. I'm hearing, oh, the government don't know what I'm doing. I'm hearing, okay, GST working for us. I'm hearing, we got opportunity now. I'm hearing, like, a bunch of conflicting thoughts. But you said it all starts in the mind. Who's protecting the mindset of the generation that's behind us to ensure that they are seeking out the opportunities in what we face today? Who's helping them to understand, like just like you said, hey, we come a long way. When you think about it, we've come a long way. Like children today going to school in AC, some classes. All children went to West End. AC were in their classrooms. In Valley School, I had to climb up and push out the window. Push out the window with a stick. You understand?
Till recently.
You know, till recently. Now they go and they have these very large classrooms. That's just one stance of it. Your parent or say your grandmother gets sick, and if they ain't got a bush or the seawater, it's a hard decision. And probably is still for some people, which is about to change. It's a hard decision to decide if you're going to the doctor. Are you going to buy the 2 school books your children need? But we are on the cusp of free medical care for Anguillians over 70. Where we're at now, I remember everybody used to share. You got a sandwich with some of that marmalade jam. You could break off the top piece and give somebody. If you didn't have something, children ain't carrying lunch to school no more. Some are ashamed, some don't have it. But we have a school feeding program that has started. Like, from the outside, but inside looking in. What's your thought on all of this?
Wow. That's a big question. But it takes a big answer. Maybe I'm following Minister Hayden Hughes quite a lot here, quoting the Bible, but the Bible really does says, without a vision, the people perish.
Right.
Yeah?
Here we go, because she's been talking about a national development plan and all kind of things. She grabbed onto the premier's heels when he was here the last time. I thought she was checking the pressure. Tight about this national development plan.
No, because I completely agree. People who don't, one, there's so much that's coming from this, not to cut off the answer, but there's so much that's coming from this. If you don't know your history, you're likely to repeat it. And if you don't know where you're going to be lost. And quite honestly, I feel that sometimes we have not taken, you've spoken, Ivan, about so much that we've encountered in the past 15 years or so years. from, again, global recession to banking
Everything.
crisis, Hurricane Irma to a global pandemic, one that no one alive has seen before.
Yeah. Oh God.
I know I heard you say Brexit the first time, and I wanted to put that to the side because in the second half of this, I want to really get into what that means for us, because for us, we feel very far removed from it. We had no say, we could not vote, but it affects us. But if you don't know where you're going, you're just going to be lost and wondering. I mean,
Any road could take you there.
I'll bring. I try not to do this, right? But I'll bring in a little bit of 2020 back into here, and sort of my mindset when I decided that the anchor should be my political symbol. And the reason for that was because I felt like Anguilla was at a moment where we needed to stop and say, where are we going? It's why I feel so strongly about a national development plan. If we just continue going in any which way, what are we doing? What is it that we want for this country? What is our vision for this country? Not just for the next 5 years, because we know we have elections every 5 years. And it seems to me, and it seems to a lot of persons, that, you know, with elections and a new administration, you start on one path and then you go somewhere else, or you start somewhere and there doesn't seem to be continuity. A lot of times you don't feel that whole sense of continuity, and it's a stop, reset,
Chicka, chicka, chicka.
right? And I don't think we have. God is an Anguillian. God has been looking out for the people of this country for ever.
That's a fact. Premier would say he lives in Island Harbour.
I'll say he's porch looking out on the city down in the west, but that's a different story for a different day. But
I know he does sleep George Hill.
but we have survived so much, and we continue to push, and we continue to overcome so much, and we exceed expectations. And that is the thing, as an Anguillian, we continue to exceed all expectations. When they told us, no, we need to abandon and go to Guyana because no one will survive on this rock, we have. And we continue to, even through hard times. And that's just my little tangent. But I'm going to let Dorothea answer the question that was posed to her, you know, how do we... I think, Ivan, if I may, your question was, how do we ensure that we have a mindset and instill in our children and the future generations a mindset of
You can do it.
sustaining and just using those words that are there to push forward and to not give up and to want to see this place go forward and better.
I mean, it's a big question, but I think it has a really simple answer. If you ask most people questions, they will say yes. If you said to people now, do you want to have a sustainable ocean around the coast of Anguilla? So in 500 years' time, 100 years' time, it will still be this beautiful and fishermen will still want to be able to fish? They will say yes. Every Anguillian will say yes to that. If you said to every Anguillian, do you want to keep your island covered in plastic junk and rubbish so it looks like a bomb site and tourists don't want to come here? They'll say, no, we want to keep our island looking beautiful as it is. There are certain questions that every Anguillian will say yes to. And it's worth spending time and doing a national development plan, my personal view, as well, and I've said this for over, I don't know, maybe 20 years, that will help Anguillians determine the direction of travel is, because there's some straightforward questions that everybody will say yes to. And once you say yes, you can be very clear about the direction of travel that everybody can go in. And it doesn't matter what side the politics are in or not. In the UK, ain't no political party is getting rid of the National Health Service. Good luck to you if you try. Yeah? You will lose. And it's the same thing. There should be certain tenets of our society that are easy to say yes to. And those are the things that we build a national consensus around. We already have existing national consensus around our beaches. They're all public.
Right.
No matter where they are. Nobody can have any beach. The beach is for all of all Anguillians. So I would say, without a vision, the people perish. It's time to carve the national vision for the future of this country. And once we have a clear vision, then everybody keeps all their politicians accountable to that vision.
Yes.
And that's the single thing that's going to make the difference. I think most Anguillians feel that way. Most Anguillians would buy into sustainability because really they don't want rubbish piled around the whole of Anguilla.
That is true.
Yeah, they don't want plastic that you can't get rid of. They don't want junk. They don't want to live in an island like that. And most of us automatically are sustainable. You asked about this. Like the old Anguillian mindset was sustainability. The current Anguillian mindset is sustainability. Because we were in your office talking to that young man who was talking about, cisterns. Yeah? It's our mindset is that we build cisterns. You think people build cisterns all over the world? That's an Anguillian mind. That literally is an Anguillian mindset because we didn't have no water. Yeah? So we had to build like that and think like that.
Yes.
Yeah, and we conserve our water. We water our peas. We water our bush around our. Like most Anguillians have a few bush somewhere to make tea in case there's a problem. So we still, that's an old mindset that's part of our national culture and heritage. And it's finding those things we coalesce around about our culture and who we are and turning that into our national vision, which will make the difference. And that is what I think we need to do. We need to think about what kind of a country do we want to leave for in 200 years' time. And that 200-year window, which I've really learnt this time,
Shut.
is just a lifetime. Yeah, my slave ancestors were here in 1830, and they could talk about how they were trafficked over and what happened to them, and their lifestyle and how they missed their home, and then how they survived. My uncle would have been born in 1903. He only died not that long ago. Yeah, and he looked out for them.
Yeah.
200 years is not a long time. I've been in the earth 50. Yeah, so it's not a long time. So carving a plan that's will still be valid for 200 years forward is, I think, a duty for us. Now we know where we're going. We know pretty much the way the world is going to be.
Yeah.
We know what we don't want. And we know what we do want.
Yeah, that's a very important start. I couldn't help in the conversation just now. Both of you are throwing out the word sustainably. And I just want your opinion. This is Ivan wanting your opinion. Recently, we introduced GST. And for us, GST means growing sustainably together. You talked about a 200-year plan just now. You mentioned that. I can tell you the average mind went haywire just now, 200 years, because some people ain't planning for the next 2 years. But again, sustainability requires that. What are the tenets that we can employ now to make sure that sustainability is something that transcends generation?
I think a key thing is I said it's an old thing. Sustainability is how our ancestors lived and how our parents lived. And it's so important to pass that down to the next generation.
Okay.
I don't think... The one thing that my dear friend Christina used to say, and she did this during the pandemic, she ran cooking classes online and shared and she called it the global cooking classes, shared some of those menus that our ancestors had. Now, there's a reason for that. Yeah, because through those menus you learn about the food. Through the food is the agriculture. Through the agriculture is the heritage and the history. And it's so important to conserve that history for the future, because that gives your next generation understanding of why they do what they do. And that's the difference. If you can do that, I always say our fishermen are the best protectors of our oceans. I said it at the beginning of this conversation. And if they are able to pass down that knowledge and insight they have to the next generation will protect those oceans. And the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. And that means you become sustainable. But if you don't pass that history and heritage and culture down, you asked about the projects that I've worked on. One project I worked on, going back some time ago, was I worked with the 19 most conflict-affected countries in the world.
I'm not even being funny.
Yeah.
Given our recent... Was Angola under this?
No.
You would be bad to believe.
No.
Like, we have war outside and it's lightning and brimstone and fire. I'm just saying.
No.
Because you did say you worked for Angola several times. Maybe I'll take from your song, but it's one of the most countries in the world.
No, not at all. But the thing that I wanted to say about that is that we're talking about places like Pakistan, Afghanistan, South Sudan, Sierra Leone, Liberia. Some of those places now no one thinks about being in conflict. And what I learned from those is how quickly you can go from a great society to a society where brothers and sisters will kill one another. It's a tough lesson, yeah? Because it takes a long time to rebuild your society. And in the meantime, you lose generations. Yeah? Young men, young women, resources. Conflict is a horrible, dark evil. And it doesn't take a lot. Yeah? That's what's going on in TCI at the moment. That's really what's going on in Jamaica, in some parts of Jamaica.
Yeah.
I hear a little flickers about, you can't come here and you can't go here in Anguilla for young men. It doesn't take a lot. And the reason why I say that is that if you build a coherent national vision and you train your next generation in terms of sustainability and the history, their heritage, their history, their culture, and the future, you give them something to. The Bible says, "Write the vision and make it plain, so those who can see it can run to it."
Yeah.
The Bible is so full of wisdom.
True.
In my aging years, if you write that vision and make it plain, those who see it will run to it. But if there is no vision, the people perish.
Yes.
And that I think is, that I think is the most critical thing for Anguilla now. I think we are at a crossroads where we're now mature. Yeah, we started off, we didn't really know who we were, where we are. It's been 50 years, over 50 years since the revolution now. We're now mature. We have got phenomenal people in this place. Some of the best minds, the best ingenuity, the best innovations, the best commitment, really thinking about how you can change things. Some of the civil servants here are just extraordinary. They're world-level civil servants. They would prosper anywhere in the world.
Shout out the Ministry of Finance one time.
Yeah, a big shout out to the Ministry of Finance. Big shout out. And others,
Yeah,
other ministries.
Other ministries.
Yeah. And you have an opportunity to think differently, be differently, and to take your country on a journey to prosperity, progress, and economic independence. And this is something that you shouldn't think about lightly. Because if it goes wrong, it is really not that far away to go to a place that isn't like that anymore. And I say that from my experience of working in places where it is so... I've worked on projects in which I'm picked up by at the airport, and I have a military escort at the front, a military escort at the back. I sit in a car with a soldier with an AK-47 for 2 hours just to get to my hotel. I can't step outside of the hotel without military. We don't want to move to societies like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, where people rob, steal, where there's conflict, where there's and when you get to a place where you don't have a vision and you allow and things, evil things flourish,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that people know aren't good, that's where you get to. So you asked me the question, set a vision, so people can see it and run to it. And that's, I think, is the big challenge for us now. And then it's about doing what we did before. You know, everyone looks at Anguilla's development and think it just happened in a vacuum. No, there were some great minds at that point who took us through the revolution, who took us to where we got to in 1981, who navigated that, who managed our tourism very, very well and set standards for how we would be. It didn't just happen as an accident. There were some great minds behind that. And again, this is the moment in time to not just let things happen, but to start to paint a picture of the way the world, the way the island should be.
True.
And then to work out how you get there.
Yeah, that is...
Awesome.
Just listening, and my mind goes to a place, and we speak about seeing conflict in other places and what it took to get there. And sometimes I am a little bit fearful because words matter and words plant seeds.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I think on a daily basis, a lot of persons are inundated with some rhetoric that I am seeing seeds of conflict being sown.
Yep.
And I'm fearful for what that can bring if we don't find a way to go, hey, look, this is where we want to go. And where we want to go, there's no room for that. And so I'm hoping that, there would be something on the horizon. It's Ivan, again, you know my passion.
I'm
for my passion for a national development plan, because I know what it can do.
I don't want to speak out of turn, but work towards that has started. I know we've started. There's so much going on though, but there's going to be a premier summit that is the foundation for that, and from that you'll see those things come out. Don't take for granted, like Dorothy said, like our development thus far has not happened in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
And being on the inside now, I have a greater appreciation, and you can say I'm touting the horn of this team if you wish, but I can only talk about what I know, and I see how things are connected and the gears are locking together and we're starting to turn. Like, there's a reason why, you understand, the ministries, like you said, were placed the way they were placed. There's a reason why health is coming back under the ministry. There's a reason why, our tourism footprint is starting to change with certain infrastructure projects. There's a reason why, there's a focus on certain key aspects where health is concerned, because there is a plan. The onus is on government now, and those that support them and those that are in seats of influence like yourself, to say, hey, yes, it appears like these things are locked, but put it to paper, write it down, make it plain, so we know exactly where we're going and what's next. Because truth be told, that has to happen. The young people out there, they want to know, where am I going to...
This won't change in 2 years.
No.
That the work that's being put in won't change simply because you have an administration change. The thing that, again, that drives me with a national development plan is that it supersedes any political party.
Exactly.
It is
Exactly.
it is a document
Exactly.
for the people, by
With
the
the
people. It must have buy-in, and I think Dorothea said it best. A national development plan, it asks questions. What are the things that as Anguillians we can agree on? What are the basic things that we can say, yes, 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 and then how do we get?
Yeah.
So ensuring that that yes continues. For me, without that, I think we continue to just be lost in the wind. And while things are happening, because I don't think anyone can deny that things are happening, but as young people, the things that concern us is that, yes, things are happening, and no, they may not be happening just because. How do we ensure that they continue to happen? And again, that whatever is happening is sustainable. And that you have a country that I can be proud to say, I am an Anguillian. Whether I live in Anguilla or I live in the diaspora, I am an Anguillian, and Anguilla is my home. To that point, I wanted to segue a little bit into over the past few years, and this is one of the things that we don't really speak about when we speak about challenges that we faced in Anguilla, and that is migration out of Anguilla. And when you think about brain drain and a lot of the human resources that have up and left, and I am really interested in seeing the results of the census, because I don't know that we have a true and complete understanding of where we are now and the makeup and composition of our people and the people that live and reside here. If we're not taking into consideration a lot of what has happened and continues to happen. You spoke a bit about persons moving to the UK and the work that you do in terms of, you know, getting those persons integrated into that society and setting up. How much of that have you seen in recent times? I know back in the 60s and 50s you had that mass push, but you've seen in recent times a trickle. What has that been like for you, seeing that a new wave of Anguillians move into the UK?
So there's been a much higher migration level, and it's quite hard to monitor because I find out anecdotally.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're now going to working towards in the new year. This is the new year. This year we're going to work towards this year, like formalising that a little bit more to try and capture people as they're deciding and trying to take that decision. But there's definitely been a much larger number of young people coming to study in the UK and staying, or just coming to the UK and deciding that's where they're going to make their home, for a variety of reasons. But I think the primary one is that they don't see opportunity in Anguilla in the way that would make them not want to explore the world in a different way. And that is so important. One of the things I think is going to be super important is to attract back people and to create, as part of the new vision, is to create the kind of opportunities that people don't feel they have to go, or they not that they don't want to explore the world. I really do believe and think that everyone should travel.
Amen.
I think it's so important. I think you learn so much from that process. But I do also think it's important that for the island, for the country, for the state, that you have a wealth of human resources that can run, that can be entrepreneurs, that are committed to the island. So, and that is a challenge. And I'm with you on the National Development Plan, because I think that's where it starts. Like having some kind of long-term vision for people to be part of, and then creating opportunities within that. The great thing about today is that you can literally work from anywhere in the world. Yeah, so you can be COVID, a blessing and a curse, has meant that, you know, businesses tend to care less now if you're working remotely, as long as the work gets done. So there's lots and lots of opportunities to create But again, you need a systematic focus for a period of time for these kind of matters. And I know this is something that is exercising government here because it's critical. It's important to the future as well.
We put it down a little bit, and as we look at the clock and we wind up, Brexit. I don't know how much, again, the average Anguillian understands, appreciates, recognizes the impact that Brexit will have on us. Because I'll say, it at the time, it felt far removed. It was like, well, that's happening in the UK. That don't have nothing to do with us here. But as you start to navigate and you look at, for persons who like to travel, I love to travel, looking at traveling, and you start to see, how do these new rules affect you with traveling throughout the rest of Europe? Do I need to, it's a question, and I just putting this out there, it's a question that I actually had just recently, you know, do I need a visa to go into European countries and a UK passport now that you didn't need before? What are those new rules? What do they look like? Where do I go for answers? And what other effects does Brexit have on us? That I think one of the ones that I know of was that a lot of persons here have benefited from the Erasmus program.
Erasmus program, yeah.
And the question is whether or not that continues. And again,
Well, they're still
what
traveling,
other?
but to what extent?
So, yeah, what other?
I was just trying to see if I could quickly find, but I'm not sure I'll be able to find it, the amount of funds that came
Isn't it
into...
about 400 million or something like that?
Well, there's a big figure. There's, first of all, there's a super, I don't have it, I can't find it quickly.
Okay.
There's a super big figure. So, let me tell you what we won't be able to get access to. Because a large chunk of my previous work, when I worked for the government between 2010 and 2016, 15, was on the European Union. It was the first time any representative had done anything with the European Union, and I was used to this. I'd worked with Europe before, and I knew it was a massive source of opportunities for the overseas territories. In the way it worked previously was that every 7 or 8 years, the European Union would renegotiate a legal agreement with the overseas territories. The legal agreement we negotiated in 2013 not only gave us access for the EDF, the European Investment Bank, a whole range of different funds, Erasmus, we've talked about that, but it meant that every single line of funding, and this is something we did, Anguilla did, we led on, every single line of funding that any other European member state, Italy, Germany, France, Spain, could get for anything, we could get. Yeah? We didn't get to vote on Brexit. So right there's a democratic deficit. Anguilla every overseas territory should have had the right to vote. And Gibraltar didn't have the right to vote, and Gibraltar sued the UK and they got the right to vote. Conscious of time. So, what have we lost? We have lost access to, number one, a €500 million pot. Just wrap that amount around your brain, around everyone's brain for a minute. What's the annual Anguilla budget per annum in US dollars?
Well, it's almost 260 something million EC, so
About 100.
About 100 million.
US.
Yeah.
Yeah? We had access to a €500 million pot of money just reserved for the overseas territories. Are we clear about that?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah? And we had a portion There's only 21 territories. We had a portion of that. Anyone who's good at maths can work that out very quickly.
But you know it ain't me because me and the timing.
But you know what I'm saying? We've lost millions,
Millions.
yeah? And we've had millions in the past. So we've lost, that's the one thing. What's one? We also had access to the European Investment Bank. So any capital development that we wanted to do, and it's been used before to develop Anguilla, for roads, etc., we could have borrowed the money from the European Investment Bank. Can't do that. So a share of 500 million euro, probably about, 20 divided by 20, maybe we've got about 20 million, 25 million, yeah? Can't get that. We had access to every single European horizontal fund, so that runs into billions. That just means if a civil servant, an Anguillan civil servant decided they wanted to go for money for, I don't know, culture or online government services, all of the money was there to go get it. So we've lost that. Emergency hurricane funding,
Yeah.
lost that. And none of these have been replaced by the UK. Yet. I'm saying yet, because we were with Lord Goldsmith and he's given a commitment
Yeah.
to review all of that lost funding and to come back to the overseas territories with a recommended new approach for the overseas territories. And he said that he feels that this is important. And that's been led by your minister here.
Yeah.
So we've lost a lot. We've lost a lot. But, this is Anguilla. We're resilient.
Yes.
Yeah? We fix it.
Yes.
I'm conscious of the time.
Yeah.
Me too. What are you ladies? True.
The one thing I would say is, again, because I'm a great lover of our history, I think you learn so much through history. Hurricane Irma showed the spirit of jollification. So I learnt about jollification, about how we turned over each other's fields, we shared in the food because we didn't have anything. And Hurricane Irma, the way Anguilla recovered itself from Hurricane Irma was about jollification. When we talk about a national vision, a national plan, we should remember that spirit of jollification across the island in everything we do, of bringing together, of coming together, uniting to achieve something in the best interest of everyone. So that's where I'd really like to end my contribution. I'd really like to thank both of you for allowing me on your podcast.
It's her show.
Is
It's her show.
that what it's called, podcast?
Yeah.
Podcast?
It's so much, but it's her show.
It's so much more than just a podcast, but it has been an absolute pleasure having you here. I think the first part of this episode in particular is one that I think should be played in every PSHE class, for every young Anguillian to hear. This to me has been I know it will not be the first episode that you hear as listening audience, but it is our first episode that we are recording in studio for season 3. And for me, I am looking forward to the remainder of this season because I feel like we've started it on such an excellent foot. As we close out, I go back to some of the things that I've done over the little break. And for Christmas, I had the opportunity to go to the Dominican Republic and seeing those cane fields. And this whole conversation kind of tied that entire thing in for me. Seeing those cane fields and knowing that just a few short years ago, that is where my grandfather was. That is where so many Anguillians were. And knowing what it took to get there. And I'm telling you, you're driving and all you're seeing is cane for hours. You're just seeing cane fields and just like, I got some, but I didn't stop to pick any there. But you're literally just driving on a highway and that's all you're seeing for quite some time. Where we see sea, it's sea and sea of cane. But just thinking about that and looking at that experience and where we are now, and how far we've come from needing to go and do that to be able to make a living here in Anguilla, and wanting to ensure, again, using that keyword, sustainability, and wanting to ensure that future generations of Anguillians can see a way of sustaining a livelihood here in Anguilla. That for me is it is of utmost importance. And so, Ivan, I know we've run out of time. Just over to you and looking at the rest of the season, the building blocks of how we look at achieving that.
I mean, I really love where you're going to end this episode, because that's the chorus that I hope, and I actually know, I don't hope, I know at this point is being sung across this island. When you have those intimate conversations, that's everybody's focus: sustainability and survival. And those aren't the bad things. But it's funny because I told the DG recently that the government intends to continue with the Growing Sustainably Together hashtag, among other things. And when you actually pay attention, like, we didn't know we were going to end up here talking about sustainability today. But that is the bedrock. That is the chorus. That is the cadence. That's everything about where we're going. That is the focus, and I'm happy that we're looking at things from that level. And in the episodes to come, I think that's going to be the driving tone for what we will see, because while a lot is happening, there's still so much more to be done. And I'm excited. I might not sound excited now. That's a little inside joke. But I'm excited. So, fun fact. I mean, I'm not going to ruin the fun fact. We take it off camera. But I'm excited about where we're going. I'm honestly excited about where we're going. Dorothy, you've given us a lot to chew on today. I'm going to make sure that the length and breadth of this island hears this episode more than once, more than twice. I mean, we're everywhere where these things are concerned, but you've given us a lot to chew on, and I want to thank you for taking the time. I know when I followed my orders, and you said, sure, and that was it, so I didn't have to ask twice. But it's important. It's extremely important, because you've given us a lot. You've given us a lot to digest today, and I'm just grateful for having heard what I had to hear from you. It put some things in perspective for me. It again tightens the strings and the passion that has bridled myself, for sure, and I know Graniva. You kind of light a fire there. I was hoping I was going to light in March under her, but it's February and I can see where this is going. But I'm excited, and I know our listening audience will appreciate what was shared. So I just want to say thank you. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another excellent episode of Progress Report, updates and conversations from the Government Information Service. Thanks for listening.